right, we're live. Good evening, everybody. You know who we are, right? You know, you know who I am. You know who. Get the right way of pointing. This guy is. uh, yeah. So Kevin's been acting a little strange lately, so we decided to keep our
Uh,
social distancing here.
uh,
Actually, where we were, everywhere where we were doing this from was a room in a fast food restaurant, and all the dining areas are closed down.
mhm.
I even went into Sneaky Pete's to get a hot dog, and usually at Sneaky Pete's they've got little chairs you can sit in. They had
Yeah,
them roped off. They had them roped off. You couldn't even sit in there, so you had to get your sandwich and leave.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
how
just
it.
the way it is. When I went to Panera Bread for my meeting in Huntsville earlier today, you walked in there and there was a sign on every other table saying,
Mhm.
"Don't sit here. Keep your distance." So they had a table in between everybody that was there.
Man,
And I posted that on Facebook, but yeah,
yeah,
very serious thing. And the politicians have done a complete about face with it. Earlier,
mhm.
Trump was like, "No worries, no worries," and now it's just a major panic everywhere.
Yeah,
So, and you say that where you're working, they're talking about letting you start working from home.
yeah. They emailed a link I have to download later that in case they start putting us at home, working at home,
Yeah,
have a certain access here for security reasons. I have to
right.
download their link where I can use it here
Uh huh.
and just to do what we can.
Right. Okay. Well, I drove through Birmingham from Shelby this morning thinking I'd see rush hour traffic, and there was no rush hour traffic. So
Wow.
it was like 70 miles an hour all the way through Birmingham. Um, so I guess a lot of people have already started working from home. I don't know, but it just surprised me.
It was packed on Highway 280 coming to Oak Mountain, but that's only because there were two accidents right there near
Oh,
Duck Boulevard. So I had to go around the back way to get
yeah.
around to Donovan Drive and 280.
Well, anyway, we wish everybody well. Be careful. There's a reason that they're doing all this, and that's to keep this thing from spreading. And
Yeah,
they know from Italy and around the world what this thing will do if we don't stop it. So hopefully we can contain it and not get sick. I
yeah,
know people my age group are supposed to stay home.
yeah,
So they say if you're over 60, try not to go anywhere.
yeah.
So anyway, all right, Abnormal Alabama, and we're going to start out. Kevin has an interesting something to share that's a little bit different. It's not a doll, but
Nope.
of course, we talked last week about what happened to his dolls. We had to take them away from him.
No.
Um, so I'm going to put Kevin up here. Let me see. Where do I do? Where did I just get Kevin there? No, that's not the one I want. Come on, Kevin. Oh, I know what I can do. Is
There we go. I don't hear you, but I'm live here, I guess. So I'll go ahead and start talking about the item. There's the pouch. This came from Gettysburg up in Pennsylvania back in fall of 2018. I went up with my dad to visit his Air Force buddy in Maryland, and we took a little 2-day trip to Gettysburg. Everybody went. We stayed in a hotel up there and went out on the battleground and took a bus tour. And in the antique shop there, I was able to find this pouch there. You can see where it would have fitted on the belt of a Civil War soldier. I don't know if this was a Union or Confederate who wore it, but this was an ammunition pouch that he used to carry his bullets around. And there are two of the bullets that were taken from the battleground. This pouch has a little bit of energy with it. You can kind of when I hold it in my hands, I can kind of feel like I can see a soldier, and I can kind of feel like I'm on a battlefield now. I haven't seen anything apparition wise with this or tried to test it. It did set off the K2 meter a little bit when I tried that. The K2 meter works like a EMF detector. For those of you who don't know, it's believed if you hold it up to an area where a ghost might be and it lights up, that could be a ghost setting off the electromagnetic field. Unless you're near something electrical or cellular, that that might set it off. So you have to be careful where you are. But anyway, they had a lot of interesting stories out there, and from what I understand, they let you go out. If you can walk on the field anywhere you want to, and if you find bullets, you can take them as souvenirs. But they have them scattered in antique stores and shops there all over Gettysburg, so you can pick yourself up some there. It's very interesting. That was a very bloody battle during the Civil War, and of course, the battlefield is known to be haunted. We went during the daytime out there. We didn't go back at night because I was with my dad and senior citizens, and I didn't want to drag them out there. He was still ill at the time, and so I had to stay with him. But I would have loved to go out there at nighttime and walk that battlefield, or at least until they close, which I think is about 8 or 9 o'clock. But just standing out there, even though the temperature was mild, I mean, there was a cold breeze everywhere. And if you listen, you could almost hear like the beat of drums and the crack of a gunshot, even though there were no, events taking place there. There was, nobody actually shooting a gun out there. I can't remember what you call those things where they dress up and play like they're in the war. Reenaction. There was no reenactment going on there at that time, so I don't know where that was coming from. But it was very interesting, and they got a lot of ghost stories there. The pouch, now this was 2018, fall of 2018, and I've had it in my house ever since, about 1.5 years. So I haven't had a lot of activity from it. But whenever I go around it or touch it, I can almost feel like, I get a vision of the Civil War, and it could be because of where it came from. It is a piece of history, but it also, I think there's something with it. It feels like there's a lot of energy there with it, and I think that soldier, a little bit of his energy might be there with it. So I thought that was an interesting conversation piece. And the bullets too. I mean, I can hold these and I can feel like I'm seeing a soldier getting shot or doubling over in pain. So it's very interesting, things like this, the kind of energy they hold for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. So that's the story of the pouch. And I hope you're still there. Ah, here it comes.
Give me a second to push the button. All right. So you went there last year, you said?
It was fall of 2018, and we took we did take a ghost tour. My dad stayed in the room, but me and a few other people went on a ghost tour in downtown Gettysburg, and they've got a haunted inn there that's also a restaurant that was used as a hospital. And when they went in and cleaned up the place and got it renovated, is what I was trying to say, the word renovation. When that went on, they found bones of limbs out there that probably belonged to some of those soldiers that were, they had their parts amputated there in the hospital. A lot of that was buried on the ground. And what's really fascinating is at that hotel, and we saw it, and I got a picture. I'd have to find it and send it. But there is a street lamp outside that my cat came in front of me. There's a street lamp outside that old inn and restaurant that when it shines just right, if you look on the wall, somehow, I think part of the decor on the outside of the building that sticks out away from the wall kind of helps, but you can see the shadow looks like a silhouette of the profile of Abraham Lincoln. Which is really interesting because that's where he did his Gettysburg address there, In fact, we ate at the Lincoln restaurant there that's at the railroad track where he actually got off when he arrived in Gettysburg.
Is that the house right there?
No, that looks familiar, but that's not it.
That's
I
not it. Okay.
probably find a picture of it on here. I can look it up here and send it.
All right. We can show everybody.
But they had we went into the house. I'm going to look up the names of these places. I wish I hadn't done that.
There are a lot of pictures that people have taken out there. And
Yeah,
here's one. I guess it's out in the battlefield somewhere out there where these people are standing, and they original, and then they enhanced it, and it looks like two ghostly figures.
yes.
I don't know if you've seen that picture before or not.
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen a video that an older couple took. I mean, these people are probably in their 60s.
Uh-huh.
Were out there video on the battlefield and were shocked when they, over at the tree line, they saw these wispy shapes coming in and out of the trees, and it looked like the head and torso of soldiers marching around, coming out and going back in the trees.
Mm-hmm.
They got that on video, and it does not look fake. It looks very real. It doesn't look like anything that was CGI. It's an old video that was done with old, VHS camcorder. And that's out there on YouTube. It's very interesting because I didn't know of any way to debunk that.
Well,
I mean, they're reacting like, and they could see it as it was going on. They're reacting like that. Those are people. That's some kind of people out there.
Okay.
There's a house out there that was the home of the only civilian who was killed in the Civil War, or at least that's what they report there. I want to say her last name was Ware. She was shot during one of the battles. She was in her kitchen preparing bread for breakfast one morning, and a stray bullet from yards and yards away that was fired went through the kitchen door from the outside. Just unfortunately a perfect aim. It went through the door and went into her backside where she was standing making that bread.
I remember hearing about that one.
And her loved ones came in and found her lying on the floor with blood pooling around. Her blood stain is still on the floor there. They could never get that cleaned up. We toured that house, and it was funny. I hope they're not watching this. It was funny because when we were going upstairs or going around the house, I kept noting a weird odor, and I said, "Is this something haunting going on?" And I said, "Is that one of those demonic smells like rotten meat?" They say that follows me around. And I said, "Man, it smells like BO." And we kept going and got upstairs attic rooms where the family hid during the war. And they dug the rooms were separated, but they dug a hole and they knocked out a hole in the walls to connect the rooms so they could get to each other in case anybody, broke into the house.
Right.
But the smell got stronger and stronger. I realized the smell was coming from our tour guide. He was wearing a very heavy period costume, and this
need to go to the cleaners.
And he had apparently been sweating in that. I mean, really, I don't know how they did it back then. Really thick with coat and top hat and all that.
Was it wool? Was it made out of wool?
Probably wool.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently he was sweating and probably had sweated off his deodorant hours before. That was probably his upteenth tour. It was late in the day. But they sell, what I love is in the gift shop, they sell DVD copies of a overnight investigation that was done there by a paranormal team. I'm pulling up her name now. Virginia Wade. It was Wade was her last name. Also known as Jenny Wade.
How do you spell it?
First name was spelled Jennie. And last name was Wade.
Oh, Wade. Okay.
Yes. Wade. And it's called the Jenny Wade House.
Jenny Wade, yeah.
And it's a nice little house, and it's Now it's got, the city built around it, but at one time it was just countryside. It was probably a farm there at one time.
Right.
So it's amazing to stand there. And I bet if the people from back then suddenly beamed up into our time, it'd scare them to death what was all around their house.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got footage inside the house. They've got ropes around the furniture so you can walk up to it, look, but not get in there. And they don't want people laying on the beds. I mean, these are, almost 200-year-old beds, or however long it's been since the Civil War. They don't want anybody, disturbing that. But they set up cameras that night. Nobody's in the house, and there's a couple of investigators downstairs, a couple outside. There's no draft in that house. All the windows are sealed shut. And there it is, the Jenny Wade house. It doesn't look like much, but it is a beautiful home. When you go inside, it's spacious. You wouldn't know it from the outside. But during the night that night on camera, and it's on the DVD, I bought myself a copy. They caught the ropes. Just suddenly they were sitting, hanging still, and all of a sudden they started swinging, like as if a child had, or somebody had taken hold of it and just started swinging it, sort of jump rope fashion. And it just did that for like a full minute before it finally stopped. And they caught the door swinging shut that was wide open, no breeze. These are heavy doors in this house. And they caught what sounded like the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor, even though no furniture was moved. And that's Jenny's picture on that wall there in that picture. That's her bedroom right there, and her bed where she slept. They weren't as tall as we are today. They were kind of short back then. You can tell that bed's kind of small. But people weren't as tall back then as we are now. Somehow we've grown in our height.
Shorter people. That is, so you really enjoyed that trip.
I did. And then there was a really sad story that also has a ghost story with it. Let me pull her name up here before I start saying it. Hey. Here we go. Elizabeth Thorne.
Thorne.
Yeah, there's no E, it's just Thorn. They have a statue erected of her in the cemetery at Evergreen Cemetery in Gettysburg. It's a life-size statue of her pregnant, with her hand up on her brow like she's wiping sweat off her forehead. And she's got a pack slung over her shoulder. And she lived with her husband, Peter Thorne, and her elderly parents in a gatehouse of the Hilltop Evergreen, where the Evergreen Cemetery is now, just south of Gettysburg. And her husband, Peter, had gone off with the Union Army, so she had to assume the duties of the cemetery caretaker, because there was already a cemetery there. But she had no idea what horror was in store for her. She was pregnant, like I said at the time, very pregnant. And on Friday, June 26, 1863, 6 troopers of the 35th Battalion visited the gatehouse in search of food and drink. They rode onto the hill, firing their pistols in the air to scare the nearby residents. Elizabeth, who was not home at the time, rushed back, afraid the rebels were shooting at her mother. Catherine Musser and her daughter, I guess who were friends of the family, calmly fed the soldiers bread and butter and buttermilk. And they soon learned that the rebels had killed a local volunteer home guard cavalryman and took his horse and saddle. This is just some random information here. But anyway, they took care of the soldiers who came there. But then they were required to later on evacuate to a farm outside of town. They came back, these same soldiers who had been shown hospitality, totally damaged the property, damaged possessions. Some possessions they took, some they left broken and damaged. All the livestock and pigs were gone. The fencing and pig pen were torn down and used as firewood. And there were, they say, maybe over 100 dead soldiers littering the hilltop there near the cemetery. Hundreds of them, it says. So all of the people in town were afraid to go up there. So guess who was left to bury every single one of those bodies? Yep. Pregnant Elizabeth with her big belly hanging out with that poor little baby had to risk her life and health burying those soldiers. She was 6 months pregnant as she dug the graves in the sweltering July heat. So you can imagine a pregnant woman in the July heat burying hundreds of bodies. She did deliver the baby. Rosa was the name, but Rosa never had a healthy life, and she died at the age of 14. And from what they told us, I don't see it here, but from what they told us, I think they gave Elizabeth, the government at that time, gave her, for compensation for all her hardship and the loss of her daughter, they gave her $10, which at the time was probably a lot. I don't know. But $10 isn't going to bring her little girl back. It's not going to bring back her damaged property. But she did live, a while, and she passed away and is buried there. And that statue of her is over her grave. And people have seen her walking the cemetery, her ghost walking the cemetery with a pouch slung over her back, just like the statue. I haven't heard the statue is haunted. That's the first thing people say, is the statue haunted? But there's no stories of that. But
nothing about that.
There are none that I've seen yet. I mean, I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody out there. But I haven't heard any. But I have heard the story of her ghost lumbering around. But I just thought that was sad.
Yeah.
A bunch of chickens out there didn't want to come up there, so they made her. She had to bury all those bodies by herself. And that's just one of many horror stories that went with Gettysburg.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I did learn an interesting fact in the Civil War Museum there, which I would have never known. Do you know the majority of the soldiers from Alabama actually fought on the side of the Union? There was like 8,000 something soldiers on their side and only 300 on the Confederate side.
Really?
Which blows my mind. It's right there. They have the plaques in the museum of each state and how many fought on each side.
Mm-hmm.
That blew my mind.
Well, you know where Winston County is.
Yeah.
Well, Winston County became known as the what they call it, the Republic of Winston or something like that. Yeah. They remained neutral. They refused to engage in the Civil War, so they remained neutral. And that's just outside of up there, Walker County, up in that area.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but now you recently also went to Savannah, Georgia, and there's of course Savannah's known as a haunted town, but one of the reasons, if I understand correctly, and you are more fresh on this than I am, is because the Spanish flu killed so many people in Savannah that created a lot of the ghost hauntings. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean there's graves all. I mean that whole city, the streets the sidewalks you're walking on, the streets you're driving on, there are dead bodies under there. It's like one big cemetery.
Yeah. So the fascinating thing is, you think of what's the connection between the Civil War and the Spanish flu. The Civil War took place in the 1860s. The Spanish flu in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So in the Civil War, there were some 600 to 700,000 killed during the Civil War. Is that right?
Yeah.
The Spanish flu in just America, United States, has 675,000 killed. And of course millions around the world. So anywhere you go, whether it's the Civil War or the Spanish flu in the States, any connection, there's always some ghost story around one of those two events. And the ones you're talking about were in Gettysburg because of this item you picked up when you were there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And are those actual bullets? They're not remakes or anything?
No, those are actual bullets that were pulled out of the ground. They do that. So those shops, I mean, if you want to go out there with, I've heard people go out there with those metal detectors and see if they can.
Right. So is that made out of lead or what?
I believe it is.
So do you have a magnet to see if it's?
I don't have one on me. There's one that's that round.
Right, that's the little round one.
Yeah, I
Black
guess.
powder guns. That it's amazing how they fought that war with black powder, didn't they?
Yeah, it is. And then you got this one that's actually kind of dented in there with fire.
I've got one of those. Looks identical to that.
There we go.
Yeah, and it is metal. It don't look metal when you look at it.
Well, you can feel it.
But it is metal. Very hard. It will penetrate.
Yeah, it will. So yeah, but they I think they are at least that. I mean, imagine that that's what they got dug out of their legs and things, and
in their skulls too, right? Their head.
Yeah.
Well, that was a war and those kind of things, and of course the Spanish flu, all traumatic events. I've got to ask you a question. You're sitting there, and behind you, over your shoulder, next to that bookshelf, is something on the wall. What is that on the wall?
Well, what the thing down here I had on the show last year? That's that shapeshifter mask.
Oh, you brought that. Yeah. Okay.
And then above that is a weapon, a Native American weapon that my brother bought me for Christmas. He got it from an Indian powwow.
Okay.
He goes to a lot of powwows, and he bought that for me. It's got a blade sticking out of the ball up there at the top, so they would swing it. And
you're a vicious animal. What? Now you got somebody's head up there on that shelf.
Yeah. That's one of the Michael Myers masks from the Halloween movies.
And then you got a couple of action figures.
Yeah, there's the Incredible Hulk, the Thing, and above my head there's a little clown statue that Cherie Shoon gave me.
Growing out of your head.
Yeah, growing out of my head.
Wow. And, so you didn't you kept a few little haunted things around your house.
Yeah, I left these things up there. I didn't think that would bother anybody. I don't know. There's a big old spider over here from Thailand.
What? I got to ask, how's your cat dealing with all this stuff gone? Is it lost?
She's fine. I think she seems to be happy with all the space she's got to run around now. She did not like it the night we were toting them out, packing them. She was mad and crying at me, and then she was swiping. She was popping my sister with her paw, screeching at her every time she'd go out the door with the dolls and put them in the box. But after it was done, she just kind of roamed around the house, and then now she seems happy there's so much space.
So we've been talking about 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I want to remind everybody, I'm Kelsey. This is Kevin. His website is myhauntedDolls.com. You can go to abnormalalabama.com, which is behind me. Kevin has a few books out for sale, just a couple.
Just a couple.
He got a couple of audio books out too.
Yes.
Enlighten the Peoples.
Yes. The audio books, one came out the beginning of this year, which is Crimson, the Blood Painting. No, it's not Crimson Tide for all the Alabama fans, but it's Crimson, the Blood Painting. And that is it's based on a couple of haunted paintings I have, but mainly on a haunted painting that came from Salem that actually hung in the house of a practicing witch. And I have done a spirit box session around it, and I kept getting a deep voice. It could have been a deep female voice, or it might have been a male. I kept saying Crimson, Crimson. So that's what I named her. That we don't have a name for the witch or the lady in the painting, although the painting is of a lady in mourning. As we've talked about the Civil War. This actually is a painting of a woman whose loved one was killed in the Civil War battle, and she was wearing her mourning dress and had her painting done. And I think this is just one of the copies of it, but it's an antique copy with the antique frame around it. It's got to be late 1800s. And I still have it hanging in my house. It's a good decorative piece, but it does have a little ghost story with it. But that's where I got the idea for the book, and it's in paperback, and it's also on audiobook on Audible, iTunes, Amazon. You can go in there and get it. And the person who performs it is a wonderful voice actress named Lynn Thomas, who does an amazing job. And if you like that, I also have another book on audiobook called Legends of Indian Narrows, Ghostly Childhood Memoirs, that I narrated, telling the stories of the ghostly legends and the goings on in the neighborhood I grew up in over in West Jefferson. And also tells the story of my house where I grew up and the ghostly shenanigans that occurred there. So be sure to check that out. These are all on paperback too. And my haunted collection about my haunted dolls, it's in there. And I was working on the sequel to that, my haunted collection, The Dark Side. But with this upcoming move, I've kind of been focusing on house hunting a lot, and everything else is kind of at a sit still till that's done.
But his books are still available regardless.
Yes, you can go to myhaunteddolls.com if you want to order a paperback copy autographed, or if you just want to buy it online, it's on Kindle and Amazon, Books A Million, all the online sellers, Barnes and Noble.
Do you have a copy of your Crimson book handy?
I've got my books, but Crimson, I believe, it's out in the trunk of my car. I don't know.
Well, I was going to suggest, to get people interested in our books, that I was going to maybe read a few pages out of my book. And you could do the same, like the first few pages of your book.
Here's the one of the posters, Crimson.
There you go. So what if I hey Kevin, you got a cat in your face.
Yeah.
What if I talk about my book and read like a chapter out of it to tease them while you go get your book, so you can read a chapter out of your book, the introduction?
Okay.
There's a ghost looking in the camera there.
A ghost. Crimson. Ooh, that's the picture of the painting I was talking about.
All right. So I'm going to let Kevin go get his book. In the meantime, this is mine, and it's Dating the Dead. And I want to give you a taste of what this is about, and hopefully that's interesting the way that cat is doing there. So I'm going to. I'm going to take, while you're gone, I'm going to take you off screen here for a minute. Okay. So my book is called Dating the Dead. And I'm going to share a little bit out of this to hopefully tempt you to want to buy a copy of my book. We're going to begin this journey of dating the dead, delving into stories of human interaction with the dead and our fascination with death. There is a name for all this, and the relationships as far as in a sexual way. Scriptophilia, the term, uses this phenomenon. So I'm going to just go, let's see, chapter 2, and give you a little tease as to what's in here, and hopefully get you to purchase one of these books. I've got copies in my possession. You can buy directly from me. I'll be glad to autograph it, or you can go to Amazon. It's there, either one. Dating the Dead, nothing new. The idea of marrying a dead person is older than the Magna Carta, and it's called ghost marriage. Imagine a world where till death do us part wasn't taken literally, where you could be married after death and even get married after you've already passed on. There's no need to imagine. Necrogamy, or marriage that takes place after death, is alive and well today. Though the form and frequency of the practice varies across the globe, the fact remains that in some places, the right to marry never ends even beyond the grave. Ever since Joy was a little girl, someone or something had stalked her bedroom late at night. At first, this specter inexplicably terrified her. But when she became an adult, the ghost continued to visit her, and it became something of a familiar friend. I used to have visits from strange spirits or whatever and actually have sex with them. Joy, who did not want to be reveal her last name, said, "It was very pleasurable. It was almost like I was in a real relationship with a guy." Unbeknownst to Joy at the time, she was experiencing what paranormal investigators and parapsychologists have deemed spectrophilia, a term that encompasses both the actual act of alleged paranormal intercourse with ghosts, spirits, or invisible lovers, and the fetish for paranormal intercourse. It also, curiously, is used to describe a sexual arousal derived from reflections in mirrors. The phenomenon has come to be something of a punchline in recent years, thanks to a rash of sexual supernatural encounters reported by celebrities like Lucy Liu, Keisha, and famously Anna Nicole Smith, who claimed a ghost would crawl up her leg and have sex with her while she was living in Texas. "I used to think it was my boyfriend. Then one day I woke up and found it wasn't," she told FHM magazine. Natasha Blasik, an actress best known for her film parody Paranormal Activity 2, had a similar experience that went viral after she revealed it on a British talk show last year. "I just could not feel this presence coming closer. I just could feel this presence coming closer and closer. And then I start feeling the actual touch without being able to see it. The touch itself like that is kind of human, like, hands. I could feel it all over my body." Grim grinning ghost. Despite the elbow nudging and eye rolling the idea of ghost sex can invoke, eerily similar experiences of supernatural sex or spectral rape has been reported in one form or another since at least 2400 BC, when demons, ardent lily in Urdu lily, were described on the Sumerian king list, the tablet that gave the world the Epic of Gilgamesh. On the tablet, the demons are described as visiting men and women nightly to either become pregnant or to impregnate humans with hybrid spawn. This is something that's gone on, truly written in every culture, in every philosophy, in every religion since the beginning of time. Patty Negri, a psychic who conferred with Blasik after her experience and who served as a paranormal expert on the Travel Channel special Ghostly Lovers, told Mick. The book Sleep Perilous Nightmares and the Mind-Body Connection further recounts the demonic predators and the spectrophilia-like experiences that have appeared in the more than 4,000 years since the tablet was etched. They include reports from ancient Greek medical literature, a tale from the Old English epic poem Beowulf, an account from the Prophet Muhammad, and 16th and 17th century witch trials. You feel like you're going to die, but even though ghost sex predominantly has its roots in mythology, modern-day researchers now attribute the phenomenon to a very real, very common condition, sleep paralysis. When I first started working on it, a lot of people thought it was a cardinal symptom of narcolepsy, which it's not. David Hufford, author of The Terror That Comes in the Night and one of the first researchers to begin studying spectrophilia, said, other people mistook it for psychosis, schizophrenia, for example, which is not. It's normal and it's common. and much more common than people thought it was. Sleep paralysis is thought to be the result of someone waking up before their REM or the rapid eye movement sleep phase cycle is finished. Estimates for exactly how many people affected by sleep paralysis vary widely, but Hubbard said that he believes roughly 20% of people have this experience at some point in time. Because of the psychological mechanism that prevents sleepers from acting out their dreams, those who experience this are left paralyzed, hence self-reports of being frozen during ghost sex encounters. They can also experience intense fear, chest pressure, hallucinations, and difficulty breathing. Worst of all, the sufferer, despite being unable to move, feels fully awake throughout the entire episode. Your body can feel like it's getting pushed or crushed. It can be painful for some people. In fact, it can be so terrifying that a string of these related deaths among Laotian refugees in the United States inspired horror vanguard Wes Craven to create a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. You feel like you're going to die. No matter how many times it happens to you, you feel like you're going to die. When terror turns to sexual arousal, it's not exactly clear why certain people experience it or who's at risk for the condition, though anxiety and lack of sleep do seem to play a role. Negri says that anecdotally, women are more likely to report spectrophilia than men, but she attributes that largely to a reporting bias. I certainly have men who've experienced it, but women seem to want to talk about it more and experience the wheres and the whys. More difficult to pinpoint than the cause of this is the fraction of sufferers whose episodes aren't terrifying but are instead of a sexual nature. According to Hubbard, sexual sleep experiences are maybe no more uncommon than blissful out-of-body reports of the same sleep paralysis, which have also been reported. And according to data from researchers, David Allen Chain, while 95% of people who experienced this over a lifetime reported feeling fear, 13% of those respondents also reporting having pleasurable experiences. Laura Hill, a 23-year-old woman from Louisiana, said she experienced both sexual pleasure and terrifying episodes during this. The first time, she said, it was a combination of them both. It creeped me out. I definitely felt sick about it, but it definitely felt like something sexual was happening to me, and my body was responding. It was all kind of just, this is really weird, and I'm not sure what's happening. Joy reported using self-pleasure as an antidote to the terror that would otherwise bring. She says that she has a technique for keeping night terrors at bay using a hand that floats out of her body etherically. I will go down and just pleasure myself, and it will take the fear away, and I'll have an orgasm. If I don't do that, I get super scared, and it's a horrible experience. This is a brief introduction to my book, and I want to share a little bit. That was a little bit from the second chapter, a little bit from the third chapter to give you an overall feel where this is going. Ghost marriage in modern times. The most prominent still surveying legal acknowledgement of necrogamy is a French law which dates back to December 31, 1959. The law came following the collapse of the Malpasset Dam, which left one woman's fiance dead. Irene Jardot, the grieving bride-to-be, pleaded with the government to let her marry him anyway, post-death. It is unclear whether Jordan's social capital or the plentiful media coverage of her case swayed the French government, but within a month, Article 171 of the Civil Code was written, and here is what that code says. The President of the Republic may, for serious reasons, authorize the solemnization of marriage if one of the spouses died after completion of official formalities marking its unequivocal consent. In this case, the effects of marriage dated back to the day preceding the death of the husband. However, this marriage does not entail any right of interstate succession for the benefit of the surviving spouse, and no matrimonial property is deemed to have existed between the spouses. In practice, this means that while a living person may marry someone who is dead, they cannot receive any of the deceased money or belongings. Inheritance is gone. They can, however, receive a pension and insurance claims, and any children born or in utero at the time of marriage are considered the deceased legitimate child. Otherwise, it's a purely symbolic ceremony, as the living spouse is considered a widow or widower at the time of the ceremony. Some 20 posthumous marriages are conducted every year in France, and there are examples of similar practices in the United States, South Korea, Germany, South Africa, Sudan, Thailand. In China, however, where ghost marriage was once permitted, the idea of marrying the dead takes an entirely new angle, and you're going to have to get the book to learn more about that. Also, the book goes into Christianity and the dead, Mormonism, and marriage by proxy. And we get the good stuff in here. Individual tales of ghostly marriage and sex. Let me see if I find a short one, and then I'm going to let, see if I can consume maybe 10 more minutes here. And then we'll go back to Kevin and let him share some of his book. So this account was shared in 2011, New Hampshire, United States. I'm a widow, and I live with my teenage daughter in a mobile home in a trailer park. My home is less than 20 years old, but it's definitely haunted. We have two types of ghosts. One is human, the other is an animal. They seem to travel together, so when one isn't around, neither is the other. Over the last 6 years, we've had several experiences with our ghost, from soda cans flying across the room, fans being knocked off a television twice, hearing typing on keyboards, but there's no one on them when I check, hearing a laugh track from old sitcoms from the 60s and the TV isn't even on, thumping in the back room, things walking on the bed and resting at our feet, and so on. My daughter's friends had all felt the ghost cat, and a few experienced the human. We all accept that ghosts exist and welcome them. I've had ghostly encounters in nearly every home I've lived in, so I think they realize we're safe and can be trusted. We watched a show on Discovery, or a channel like that, about women who have had sexual encounters with ghosts. That night when I went to bed, I commented aloud that I wouldn't be surprised to have a ghostly visitor have sex with me. I masturbated and fell asleep, much like I did every night. Later that night, I half woke up and discovered I was half laying on my stomach and my hips were moving as if I were having sex. I could feel a weight against me, but I knew I was the only one in the room. I didn't recall having erotic dreams. I drifted back to sleep. That's all I remember. The next night, it happened again. I didn't masturbate before sleep this time. I wake up in the same position with the same movements of my hips, with a weight on top of me. Again, there was no one else in the room and no erotic dreams. I drifted back to sleep, and again, that was the end of it. We had the usual ghostly interactions over the next few months, but no more sexual activity. One day I realized we hadn't had an interaction for a few months. Then 2 weeks ago, my daughter was woken by a man screaming in her room. Just the two of us were there. Then I was getting dressed to go out to a party. I heard the door open and a male voice say, "I'm back." We weren't expecting company, so I was half naked in my bathroom. When the door wide open, I heard the voice, slammed my bathroom door, then asked who was there. My daughter, who was in the kitchen, said she hadn't heard anything. After that, the ghost interactions started up again. They've been very active, especially the animal. I have felt it in my bed many nights. My daughter has had her own experiences. Last night, the ghost animal was moving all over my bed. I knew it wasn't my cats, as I could see or touch both of them. I drifted off to sleep after masturbating. I half woke up in the same position as the other two times. I could feel a weight against me and my hips moving as if I were having sex. I drifted back to sleep, woke up again with the same thing happening, then finally fell asleep for the rest of the night. There is story after story. Then I have bonus chapters in the back, and these are stories that are shared by people that claim to have really had these experiences. A lady who had sex with elves, someone that had sex with Bigfoot, more than one lady that claims to have married a ghost, and then the famous people that claims to have had a sexual encounter with ghosts, including none other than Dan Aykroyd. All these stories are here. And at the end of it, we finally get to this guy right here. And I'm going to share this picture because you may have seen this guy who fell in love with his car. Now, I didn't have to use my imagination in any of this book. These are stories shared by the people that share the stories. They claim it's true. Dating the Dead. You can find more about this book at datingthedead.com. And buy my book, please. Now, Kevin's back with us. The Crimson Clickbait book. And he showed you the poster of it. Now, I tried to spend as much as roughly 30 minutes as I could sharing some stories out of my book, which mine's a little bit different, but it is kind of some ghost stories, but it's kind of adult oriented because it's of a sexual nature. Spectrophilia is a term for it, and that's described in the book. Kevin now can take his time and share to tempt you and tease you with his book. Now, this book was not narrated by you. It was narrated by someone else in the audio form. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was a voice actor named Lynn Thomas.
Yes. But now, to get you interested in the book, he's going to share a few minutes with you out of his book to get you fascinated with it so you go out and buy the book from him. So, Kevin, it is all on you, and I'm going to take myself out of the picture for a little bit.
All righty. Crimson, the Blood Painting. There's the paperback copy. Kind of nice and glossy. Got a reflection on there, but there you go. You can get a good little look at it there. And the image on the front cover is the painting of the woman in mourning from Salem, Massachusetts. That was done back in the Civil War. And this now hangs proudly in my great room and in here in my house. But I'm going to start off in the beginning of the book here. In the early chapters here, it sort of goes back in time to start the story. All right. I'm going to read part of chapter 1. Chapter 1 consists of a transcript. Now, this is fiction, but it is based on an actual 911 transcript, so that I based this on. Transcript from Decree 911 call, Lance, Michigan, August 26, 2002. Dispatcher, 911, what is your emergency? Decree, raspy breathing. Dispatcher, hello, 911, what is your emergency? Groaning sound from the other line. Dispatcher, sir, can I have your name, please? Yeah, I just committed a father's worst sin. What do you mean, sir? I just shot my daughter in the head and my son in the head. Okay, what is your address? I had to put them out of their misery. Where are you, sir? And now I'm going to have to shoot myself. Sir, are you armed? Yes. Do you have the weapon on you now? Yes, I do. What is your name? Michael DeCreek. I shot my kids and now I'm going to have to shoot myself. Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to put the gun down. I'm sorry. I can't do that for you. I got to shoot myself too. Oh my God. Michael, I don't want you to do that. I want you to stay on the line and see if I can get you some help. You can't help me. It's already done. It's what the painting wanted. It's hard for me to hear you, so I need to ask you to calm down. The demons went into my children. I had to do it. Please calm down and let me try to help you. Silence. Michael, are you still with me? They got to take out the painting. It won't let me take it out. I don't understand you. The painting. You got to make them take it out. Bury the damn thing. Michael, calm down. Rustling sound in the background in an audible voice. Is someone else there with you, sir? No, get away from me. Michael, who is there with you? Loud gunshot, end of call, end of transcript. All right, and then I'm going to go to chapter 2, which we jump forward in time. Otho, New Jersey, August 26, 2010. Cynthia Very lay on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, watching the blades of the ceiling fan spin slowly above her. The shadows of the blade cast onto the ceiling in the gloomy room made the fan look more like a spider, its legs spinning as it prepared to pounce on her. Just what I need, she thought humorously to herself. Another delusion. Perhaps it may soon sprout from the ceiling, land on top of her where she lay now, wrap its many legs around her and squeeze before biting off her head. If that were the case, she hoped it happened soon and quick before she got off the bed. Seeing giant spiders on the ceiling came as no surprise, since delusions seemed to be her forte these days, especially that damned painting. Unlike the imaginary spider, the painting really did face her now, looking down at her from the ceiling, only 5 or 6 feet away from the ceiling fan. It looked like someone had climbed up on a stepladder and nailed the painting to the ceiling instead of the wall, although no nails appeared visible to her. She had no idea how the damn thing stayed attached to the ceiling like that. Perhaps it excreted its own adhesive and glued itself there. After all, it had the ability to disappear and reappear anywhere it wanted. That's what had been going on a few weeks now. Why not have the ability to glue itself to the ceiling as well? Cynthia thought back to the day she found the painting outside her front door. She still had no clue how it got there or who may have left it. The way things went the past few weeks, it wouldn't surprise her to find out that some witch or warlock or crazy gypsy left it out there as a curse on her and her family. But why? Was it a practical joke of the most extreme evil? Or did some unknown enemy with an agenda have a hand in it? Whatever the reason, she tried several times to throw it out, even burn it in the fireplace once her 2 children started acting strange around it. The strangeness started just 2 days after the painting arrived. Jessie, her youngest child, said looking at the painting made her stomach hurt. This really stumped Cynthia, and she thought perhaps Jessie's imagination was getting the best of her. Then Jessie started throwing up violently the following week, and soon she remained barely able to get herself out of bed. Medicine did not help, and the doctor found nothing wrong. Her oldest child, Jacob, aged 12, and though only a few years older than his little sister, usually the more rational of the two, acted strange, but in a different way. At first, he became more brooding, hardly talking to her, and keeping more to himself. At breakfast and dinner, where before he always ate with a hearty appetite, he now only picked over his food and ate very little, as if his mind permanently wandered elsewhere and refused to return from its vacation. Then his mood grew worse. He became angry at the smallest things. For instance, one morning last week at breakfast, Jessie came into the kitchen and sat down at the table. She accidentally bumped against it too hard and caused Jacob's orange juice to spill onto the table. Jacob immediately stood up from his chair without hesitation, drew back his arm, and backhanded Jessie across her face so hard it sent her sprawling to the floor. The scene completely shocked and terrified Cynthia, as she'd never seen Jacob become even the least bit irritable beyond the norm, let alone get that violent. She screamed at him to stop. He turned his head and glared at her, and behind his eyes, she swore she saw a deep blackness rotating there, as if some crazy evil spirit from the blackest part of hell now possessed him. It made her entire body run cold. The wide grin with gritted teeth that he gave her provided no relief but only added to the horror. Meanwhile, Jessie lay there on the floor, staring up at him with eyes wide, the back of her hand pressed to her mouth as if to try to silence her cries. Her tears streamed down her cheeks and a trickle of blood ran from one nostril. Her whole tiny body shook with fear. In just a matter of days, Jessie's mood changed from that of a sick, confused little girl to one just as angry and unpredictable as her brother. The two often sat in silence in his room, whispering to each other. Whenever Cynthia went to check on them, as soon as she appeared in the doorway, the two of them grew eerily quiet, their mouths clamped shut, their eyes scanning her up and down with irritated expressions on their faces as if they were corporate executives whose meeting had just been interrupted by some peon. Sometimes she found them sitting under the painting, their legs crossed as they stared unblinking at the thing. Cynthia longed for the comfort of her husband, wishing him there to hold her in his arms and assure her that everything would turn out all right. He always knew what to say to make her feel better, and his children held nothing but affection in the strongest sense for him. If anyone could break through to the children, Rick could do it. However, a car accident on his way home from work 2 years ago snatched away the love of her life and the model father of her children. Though the insurance money he left for them helped them to live comfortably and would continue to do so for a long time, it did not replace him. She would return it all in a heartbeat just to have him back. She needed his strength now more than ever. Over the past weekend, their beloved house cat Poppy suddenly disappeared. Ricky had adopted Poppy as a kitten for them only 3 years ago as a surprise. The idea of losing the cat brought remorse to her heart. Cynthia searched the entire house from the basement all the way to the attic, but the cat remained nowhere to be found. She questioned the children if they'd seen Poppy or accidentally let him out of the house, but Jacob and Jessie only looked at each other with smirks on their faces, as if sharing a hidden joke they refused to disclose to her. Later that afternoon, she walked outside to water her flower garden when she heard a creaking noise coming from the trees at the edge of her backyard, where the forest began. She approached the tree line and saw some sort of motion in the branches of the small myrtle tree. When she got closer, the sight of the source made her collapse to her knees and vomit out her lunch. Poppy hung lifeless by the neck from a rope tied to one of the branches. His body was completely skinned. The swaying of his corpse from side to side caused the branch he hung from to creak slowly, a noise that still echoed in her head. Rushing back into the house, she demanded an explanation from the children. They both denied knowing anything about it, though the smirks remained on their faces. She knew just by looking at them that they must have performed the heinous act on their once loved cat. The cat stayed indoors at all times, and the doors and windows remained closed and locked. There was no one else in the house besides the three of them. No one else could have gotten to the cat. "Just tell me why," she demanded in a stammer. Jacob only shrugged at her. "The painting told us to." Both he and his sister giggled as if the situation were as innocent as eating cake. Having received no explanation from these strangers who were once her own children, she did the only thing she knew to do. She took down the cat using an axe to cut the rope he hung from. She then buried him in silence in a spot near the edge of the woods, saying a prayer over the grave. She still refused to believe her children could do something so violent and that something as simple as a painting could cause them to do it. Perhaps she might call someone to help, like their local pastor or even a child psychologist. Something was causing the strangeness in the children, and though she refused to believe in haunted or possessed objects, still she could not ignore that none of this happened until the painting came into their lives. The painting looked innocent enough, like something one might find in an antique store or flea market. The image was that of an unidentified woman wearing a period dress that appeared to be from the late 1800s. She was sitting on a stool and looking off to the side as the artist painted her. Her hair rested in a bun on the back of her hair, and jewels dangled from her earlobes and from the string around her neck. Her hands rested neatly, folded one on top of the other in her lap. The expression on her face showed no emotion at all as she stared off. It gave her a slightly eerie presence. To add to it, the artist did not sign the painting. She attempted to do a Google search for this painting, but found nothing matching it. There were no marks on the back to show where it came from. The frame itself was plain wood with a gold-colored paint on the surface, but looked antique enough to date the painting back to the same period as the dress the woman in the image wore. This was also an original painting, as the brushstrokes were quite obvious on the canvas. Cynthia normally liked antique oddities, and on the day she found it, decided that whoever abandoned it must not care if she kept it. For all she knew, it could be worth millions, so she decided to keep it. She hung it on the wall in the living room. Last week, however, once the weirdness in the children had already begun, she took the painting down as it started giving her the willies. She took it out and tossed it in the trash can. Right after she walked back in from the trash, she entered the living room to find the painting magically hanging from the wall again. Every time she tried to take it out, she came back to find it hanging again in its rightful spot. It scared the hell out of her. A few days ago, after the incident with the cat, she lit a fire in the fireplace and took down the painting, tossing it into the fire. She watched it burn until a screeching sound caused her to turn around. Her children stood in the doorway, pointing at the fire, their eyes wide in panic and their mouths open, the screeching sound emitting from their throats. It sounded high-pitched and inhuman. They both pointed toward the fireplace for a few moments, then suddenly the sound stopped and they closed their mouths, lowered their arms, and stood in silence. Baffled, she turned back to the fireplace to find the fire extinguished and the painting gone. Her heart preparing to pound its way through her chest cage, she looked back up at the wall and found the painting hanging back in its place with no mark on it whatsoever. In some sort of fit of anger, her children rushed forward and attacked her, beating their fists against her, clawing their fingernails into her side and causing the skin to burn. She screamed and fell to the floor, throwing up her hands in protection. Her own son glared down at her with eyes blazing mad like a deranged maniac and pointed his finger in her face. "Leave it alone," he screamed at her. and then pointed up at the painting. "It's ours now. Touch it again and we kill you." His voice sounded unlike his own, much deeper and more gravelly, like that of an older man. The very sound of it brought nightmarish images to her mind. Since then, she slept with her bedroom door locked. Normally, she didn't like not leaving her door unlocked in case one of them needed her in the middle of the night, but now she wanted to remain as far away from them as she might possibly get. She even entertained thoughts of packing up and leaving them with their beloved painting and just hitting the road to get as far as it might lead her. A good mother would banish those thoughts, but fear overwhelmed her at the idea that if she did something to upset them enough, she might meet the same fate as Poppy. Perhaps the neighbors might find her hanging upside down in the woods with all of her flesh gone. The painting started moving around on its own yesterday evening, following her from room to room. No matter what room she walked into, there the painting hung on a wall of its choice, disappearing and reappearing at its own will. It frightened her to the core. She felt the woman in the painting, in the image, staring her down, even though the eyes were painted looking off to the side. Cynthia pleaded with it to leave her and her children alone, but dared not touch it again for fear the children might harm her as punishment. As she lay on her bed, the sound of the television from the living room wafted through the walls and reached her ears. It was still afternoon, albeit late, but too soon for bed. The children now sat in there watching one of their favorite programs while eating cereal. She heard the clinking of their spoons hitting the side of their bowls in unison while they silently ate. Above her, the painting leered down at her as if watching her, anticipating her every move. "Why don't you tell me what you want?" she demanded in a quiet voice so that the children might not hear her. If the thing spoke back to her, it would not surprise her in the slightest at this point. However, it remained silent. For a moment, she continued lying there in the silence. Then came the whispers of strange voices inside her ear canals. They caressed her eardrums with their seductive tones. In an almost pleading tone, they whispered to her, "Get up, Cynthia. Get up and fix the children." Pressing the palms of her hands against her ears in a feeble attempt to stop the voices, she used all the strength she could muster to not scream like a madwoman. "What do you want?" she asked through gritted teeth. She squeezed her eyelids shut and bit down so hard that she feared she might shatter her own teeth into bits. "Fix them," the whispers pleaded with her, "for they are evil." "What do you mean by fix?" she asked. "They must be done away with," the voices responded. "If you kill them, you kill the demons." Cynthia opened her eyes to find the painting now hovering directly over her face. She jumped and gasped in surprise, putting her arms up in defense. She waited a moment for the thing to start pounding on her until it broke itself from her face. However, it remained hovering. She lowered her arms down and looked at it. The woman in the image had changed position, her eyes facing forward now at Cynthia rather than off to the side. This caused Cynthia's heart to race faster. "Kill the demons," the voices repeated. "Kill the demons." "What demons?" she asked as tears sprang from the corners of her eyes. "Your children." "No," she cried out. "They're just babies." "Not anymore. Your real children are dead. The demons killed them, and now they possess those bodies. They want you next. You must kill the demons. Kill them. Kill them." Crying almost controllably, she tried to roll over, but her body became numb and immovable. It felt like an invisible, heavy weight forced its way down on her. No, no! The tears ran fast down her face. Not my babies! They are no longer your babies, the voices chastised. Your babies are gone. Kill the demons. Kill them. As she listened to the voices chant to her, the realization of sank in further and further. Those things sitting in there in the living room really were no longer her children. They were something dark and dangerous. She knew it when she looked into their eyes and saw the evil blackness staring back at her, but she refused to acknowledge it. Ignoring it was no longer an option. They had skinned her cat, and if she did not do something in time, they'd skin her too. What other options did she have? There was no one to run to or tell. Who would believe her? They might lock her up in some sanitarium, imprisoning her forever while these two little murdering demons ran free. The tears stopped, and a strange calmness suddenly took over her body, replacing the immobilization. The painting hovering above her slowly faded away. Yet the voices remained chanting. The sound of them now brought a soothing feeling to her, flushing away all of her anxiety. She sat up slowly from the bed, gave her legs a stretch, and took in a deep, cleansing breath. Brushing off imaginary dirt from her clothes, she swung her legs over, placed her feet on the floor, and stood up. She ran her hands through her hair as if in preparation for company, then approached the bedroom door and unlocked it. Taking another deep breath for good measure, she left the bedroom. Outside, the empty hallway welcomed her. The sounds of the television still wafted from the living room, where the children, no, the demon things, still sat eating their cereal. Ignoring the coldness of the floor against her bare feet, she proceeded step by step down the hallway, taking her time and enjoying her newfound calmness. Though the living room awaited her at the end of the hall as her final destination, she reminded herself to take a detour first to the kitchen for a quick stop. She needed to pay a visit to the knife drawer. End of the chapter. So if you want to find out what happens next, you got to get a copy of Crimson the Blood painting, or you can go get the audiobook and listen to Lynn R. Thomas do a great reading of the book.
Better than you?
My voice can't go that long. I had to do a chapter a day on that ghost story book I did. So
You started coughing.
I have to drink and
Well, there's a very I'm fascinated with the book, and I encourage people personally. You can get the audio book if you want to. I'd get both of them. It's a good,
there you go.
One of each, so you can listen to it while you're driving around or sitting at work or whatever, since most people are bored at work. And you can have the book. The book just looks good. You saw that cover. Pick up that piece of paper again.
Let me get the paper because it doesn't have reflection.
Bigger, right?
There we go.
Can you imagine that on your coffee table or end table? That's a conversation starter right there.
Ooh, there she comes.
Ooh. And he's got that painting, at least it was in your house.
Yeah, it's still hanging up. And it's watching all the people that come through to view my house.
Watching. All right. If you go down south of Alabama, if you know where Andalusia off Enterprise is, just a little bit to the east of there is a little town called Newton. And there's an interesting story around that town of Newton, Alabama, that I'm going to share with you right now. It involves a William Bill Skeeto Sr., who was born June 8th. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Born in 1818 and had a unique death, 1864. Actually, his death was 2 days after my birth date of December 1. He was a Methodist preacher, and there in Newton, and he was lynched to death. And the stories I'm going to share before we get into the story that followed his death. Let's learn a little bit about Bill. We got some time here to fill, and it's an interesting story. I never heard of it. You say you have heard of it. Some of the story, of course, back in the day, yeah, it's hard to reconstruct some of the story with certainty, but he resided in Newton prior to the Civil War, and he was said to have been lynched on December 3rd, 1864. And well, I know why you know it now, because the story was told in its most common form by Kathleen Tucker Wyndham in 13 Alabama Ghost.
Yeah, Kathleen.
And that's a very well-known book, right?
Yes, yeah, especially in Alabama.
Yeah. So according to the legend, he was born in Madrid, Spain in 1818, June 8th. And he came to Dale County, Alabama as a boy with his father. And he seemed to be well liked in the community, and he chose the ministry as his vocation. While serving as a circuit rider for the Wiregrass area, Skeeto met and married Sarah Clemens, with whom he ultimately fathered 8 children. You need to get with it there, Kevin. You ain't got the first one yet, do you? Skeeto allegedly entered the Southern Army during the Civil War, though government archives contain no record of his service in any Confederate unit or local militia. So that can't be verified. He supposedly served until the fall of 1864, when he received word that his wife had fallen ill, and he accordingly resolved to return home until his spouse had recovered, or so it is told. Regardless of the truth or falsehood behind this or any other version of this story, one fact is certain. He ultimately ran afoul of the Newton Home Guard, commanded by Joseph Brer, that led to his murder. During the Civil War, Dale County had become a lawless place. Welcome to Alabama. The circuit court held no session during the last 2 years of the war, while nearby Pines Forest harbored numerous deserters and unionists who frequently emerged to terrorize locals. And still to this day, if you drive through that part of South Alabama, the pine trees are abundant. The pine forests are still there. It's not a densely populated, it is sparsely populated area still to this day. Enraged citizens formed the Home Guard units to defend against their depredations, and one such outfit was led by this Captain Joseph Brer. Brer was a lawyer in Newton and was described by his partner's son as an Englishman who had moved to Dale County in the 50s. He was an Alabama delegate to the Democratic National Convention in 1860, and he served as a lieutenant in Company E, 15th Alabama Infantry, which was recruited in Dale County. Captured in Gettysburg, back to Gettysburg again. Did you know there was that connection?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Captured in Gettysburg, he was later exchanged and returned home to serve as commander in the local Home Guard. So that was that Joseph Brer. Brer and his outfit, locally referred to as Buttermilk Rangers, only in Alabama, right? Because they were also in the service of the Confederate Conscript Department and had resolved to hunt down and punish all deserters. He had already hanged 2 men for alleged acts of treason. 2 different versions exist as to the cause of Skeeto's death. The legend, as related by Wyndham in that book, says that although Skeeto offered papers indicating that he had hired a substitute to serve in his place, according to the story, the Home Guard refused to believe him, and Brer decided to hang him as a deserter. However, historians have pointed out that the Confederacy had repealed its substitution laws in early 1864, making the legend's assertion that Skeeto had hired a substitute questionable at best. Furthermore, as noted above, no records exist of Bill Skeeto having ever served in any Confederate or state military unit to begin with. An alternative view of the reasons behind Skeeto's lynching is provided by another historian, David Williams, in his book, Rich Man's War, Caste, Class, and Confederate Defeat in the Lower Chattahoochee Valley. Williams indicates that Skeeto was suspected of helping John Ward, the leader of the local band of deserters and pro-Union guerrillas. Ward had ambushed a Confederate ammunition transport in Dale County 2 months earlier, killing an officer. One of Breer's men had subsequently been shot during a skirmish with Ward near the current county seat of Ozark. Breer had tried to hang 3 local men for alleged collaboration in the attack on the ammunition train, but was prevented from doing so by another Confederate officer due to a lack of evidence against them. Although Skeeto was never formally charged or tried for his own alleged acts of collusion with Ward, and although not one piece of hard evidence was ever publicly produced to corroborate Breer's allegations of treason, the Home Guard commander apparently decided to make Skeeto his 3rd victim. Anyway, so according to the legend, Skeeto was waylaid on the afternoon of December 3rd, 1864, as he crossed the wooden bridge over the Chattahoochee River north of Newton. Breer and his men dragged the preacher into the nearby woods, beating him and forcing him to crawl through the sand while they prepared to kill him. Skeeto was next hauled to a waiting buggy, and a rope was thrown over a post oak limb and put around his neck. We know what's coming next. A friend of Skeeto's happened by the scene at the time. Unable to dissuade the Home Guard from their intended course, he ran to Newton for help. Anxious to get on with the hanging, Breer asked Skeeto if he had any last words. He asked if he might pray. However, instead of praying for himself, as his killers expected, he began to pray for them. Instead, this so infuriated the militiamen that Breer lashed at the horse hitched to the buggy, leaving Skeeto dangling from the tree limb. In their haste to carry out Skeeto's summary execution, Breer and his men failed to take their victim's size into account. Skeeto was tall, and his weight bent the limb to the point that his feet touched the ground. One of Breer's men dug a hole beneath the minister's feet, which allowed Skeeto to strangle to death before his friends could return. Skeeto was then buried in nearby Mount Carmel Cemetery. His epitaph reads, "Gone, but not forgotten." The City Museum of Newton preserves a cloak said to have belonged to Skeeto's wife, Sarah. According to local histories, every member of Skeeto's lynching party died unnaturally, including Breer, who was struck by a limb from a post oak tree, the same kind from which Skeeto had been hanged. Now, for the rest of the story, Skeeto's lynching created quite a stir in Newton, especially as locals began to notice that the hole dug to facilitate his hanging never seemed to disappear. It retained its original dimensions as years passed on, about 30 inches wide by 8 inches deep, even when filled with trash, dirt, or debris. Locals always returned, sometimes within hours, to find it empty. Campers claimed to have pitched their tents right over the hole after filling it with dirt, only to awaken the next morning to find it seemingly swept clean. All of this turned Skeeto's story into a legend, which of course was later immortalized in Wyndham's book, bringing numerous visitors to Newton to see Skeeto's hole. At least one local resident insisted on a completely natural explanation for the phenomenon. Mary Fleming, who lived in Dale County after the war and saw the hole many times, asserted that Skeeto's friends, including one named Wash Reynolds, secretly kept it clean, all while insisting that some supernatural force was to blame. Reynolds adamantly denied this, insisting that he knew no more about what was going on at the hole than anyone else. In 1979, a new highway bridge was constructed over the site of Skeeter's hanging. His hull found itself beneath the new span. In 1990, after flooding necessitated importation of riprap to strengthen the river bank, the cavity was covered with tons of rock. Although the hole itself is no longer visible, the site remains popular with visitors and researchers of the importation of riprap to strengthen the river bank. The cavity was covered. Oh, wait a minute. I missed a line. Researchers of the paranormal. In 2006, Skeeter family members joined Newton officials in dedicating a monument to their ancestor near the site of his death, which briefly relates details from Wyndham's account. Fascinating that after all these years, of course, what do you have, 8 kids? And his descendants still live around Newton and were there in 2006. That means some of his descendants still are there.
Oh.
So you were already aware of Skeeter's Hole.
Yeah, for the first time, my dad told us that story. He told about there was actually a man who decided to try to debunk. They claim if you fill in the hole and come back later, it'll be dug back out again. So this guy decided he was going to debunk all that, and he went out there and he dug the hole, or he filled in the hole. Then he laid out his tent and popped his tent up on top of the hole.
Right
there all night, slept in the tent on top of that hole. Woke up the next morning when he took his tent down and pulled it off. The hole had been dug back into the ground. so no explanation how that could have happened with him sleeping on top of it all night. So that I first heard that from my dad, and then when I read the 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey, I saw the whole story there.
Right. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question here in just a moment, since you are so smart, Kevin.
I'm not that smart.
Since you have the massive brain size, you have accumulated so many stories about ghosts, and you've even used to conduct a ghost tour in downtown Birmingham, didn't you?
Yeah, we did a few years ago, the Haunted Birmingham bus tour.
So what happened the last year or so with that?
They were the place we started out at. Our base was the brewery in Avondale Brewery,
Yeah,
which itself is an old brewery that goes back to the 1800s there. And they built theirs right around the old brewery. They've still got some of the old machinery you can see in there, but they brew their own beer. And it's actually pretty tasty for beer. If you drink some there, you're drinking fresh from the brew.
Well, I have learned that you're quite the drinker, so.
Not quite the drinker. But we started out there. I know there had been an incident or so I probably can't talk about on the air, but
You can.
I might get us in trouble. But we did have an incident there. But I guess the Crown, who owns the bus company and ran the tours for us, and I was just the paid tour guide myself, and Lewis Powell, who you know.
Mm-hmm.
We took turns doing the tours. One time Kim Johnston did it with us, but we would go all the way from the west part of Birmingham, where Arlington House is. It's the only antebellum mansion left in Birmingham, and we'd go there and go all the way through Birmingham, and the tour would end at the Zoo and Botanical Gardens, where we shared ghost tours.
It had to be not a walking tour then.
It was a bus tour in a nice big limousine type bus. It had leather seats, had tables for stuff, had a bathroom in back. So they had it, it's a beautiful bus.
So somebody rented that or leased it.
Well, it was Crown, the owners of the company.
Okay.
Crown Transportation.
You didn't drive it. You just narrated it.
One of the owners drove it, and I would narrate with the phone. He had a speaker installed in there where you could talk on a microphone.
So that was all around the downtown area, pretty much.
Yes.
And
for West to East.
Did you memorize all that stuff, or did you refer to notes, or how did you
I
handle
had a
that?
script, and after a while, I memorized it. And then probably now I'd have to go back and look at it again to remember the names. But
So after you do it a few times, you got it down pretty good.
after a few times, like I knew it. I might have to go back and look at names to make sure I didn't confuse them.
Right.
And I would try to be kind of funny with some of it to get the people
Mhm.
laughing, and then get them scared up with the ghost stories, and then I'd get them laughing again.
So what was it done in the evening, or?
Yeah, it was at nighttime. We did 2 a night, usually on Friday and Saturday, and I would get paid by the tour. By the ticket. I would get a percentage of each ticket that was sold. They'd have 30 people per tour. It was a good side job.
Okay. So was that every night, or just certain nights that did that?
Just Friday and Saturday nights, I think twice, 2 weekends a month, if I remember. I would do one, and Lewis Powell would do one. But they were going to try to find a new place to start it at. I recommended the old Pizitz building because it's got some history. It's got a big parking with it, and people can come in there and eat and drink and meet us outside in the bus. So it'd be a great place. But I hadn't heard anything. I talked to them at the beginning of last year, and they were still deciding. I hadn't heard anything else, so I don't know if it'll start again or not.
Excuse me. Did I understand right that the tour started at that oddity shop?
It started at the brewery.
Oh yeah, okay.
We did on one of the tours. We did include the oddity shop when he heard about our tour and asked if we could come out there, and we did that. And we tried to make that a regular stop, but his hours conflicted with our tour, so we couldn't do it every time. So, but it was a good extra stop there.
So you and I both live in Shelby County.
Uh-huh.
And I know you're trying to move, but you're trying to stay, I guess, in Shelby County.
Yeah.
So in Shelby County, what is the most famous ghost story?
Ooh, Shelby County. Oh, gosh. Now Kim Johnston could tell you. She wrote the book about Shelby County ghost stories. And gosh, most famous.
Most well known.
What I heard most about, and she would talk a lot about, was that, what is it called? The Shelby Hotel?
The one that burned down.
Yeah, the one that burned down. That's the one I hear of the most in Shelby County.
I did a video of that before it burned down. I went all the way through it, which I've got on YouTube there. Have you heard of the spirit of Condi Cunningham?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That is here in Montevallo. Yeah, I know. I've heard that ever since I was a little kid. So, yeah, that's
Tell that story.
TV shows. Condi Cunningham. They've had that on TV shows. One of those reality ghost shows came out here from back in the 90s, where they'd have young people go into haunted places and try to spend the night. I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't Scariest Places on Earth. There was another one, but yeah, they went in Condi's old dorm room. And they didn't quite make it through the night. From what I understand, that has stayed vacant ever since, all the ghostly happenings.
So what do you know about the story?
The story I know was really early 1900, like 1901, 1902, around in there. That dorm, I guess it's still all girls dorm, but at the time it was an all girls dorm there. I don't remember if Montevallo was an all girls college or not at the time, but I know the dorm was just only women. And Condi Cunningham was a student there. And one of the
back then, it was called the Alabama Girls Industrial School.
Okay, so yeah, well, I remembered something like that it was a girls' school. But she lived in the dorm there with her fellow students, and the house mothers there were very strict, so they had to, if the girls wanted snacks or whatever, they had to sneak it in. Apparently, Condi had snuck in a hot plate into the room, or whatever they had that was like a hot plate back then.
Be able to cook in the room.
Yeah, and plugged it in, and one of the other girls was bringing marshmallows or something like that, so or they might have been trying to make hot chocolate. The stories vary on that, what they were doing, but they were using the hot plate. And apparently Condi got too close with her dress or her robe. It might have been what she was wearing because it was nighttime, and it caught on fire. and she went into panic mode before her, fellow schoolmates there could, stop her and put it out. Took off running. And the worst thing you can do when you're flaming up is to run and fan those flames.
You're just adding air to it.
And she fled down the hallway just in flames, screaming and put me out, By the time that somebody got to her with a blanket, and she already fallen on the floor, and they smothered the flames, but she died from I guess it was 3rd-degree burns. And it wasn't long after that people would hear screams from her dorm room. They would claim to see a flaming apparition rushing down the hallway screaming, "Put me out, put me out." And then on the door of her dorm looks like a face, a Condi's face with flames coming off of her hair.
Wow.
And if I heard it correctly, I want to say they changed the door out and the image came back again.
Uh-huh.
And finally, they just took the blame door off the hinges because everybody was coming, wanted to see Condi Cunningham's face on that door. But they didn't get rid of it because it turned into sort of a school mascot for them. The library took it and put it in the cellar or basement there where it stays. Every Halloween, they take it out and display it in the library. And they have what do you call it? They call it a lecture, but they have a night during October where people can come hear the library and see the actual door with the face and hear the librarian tell the story of Condi Cunningham. And you can see it up close and in person.
Now that's known as Montevallo University.
Yeah, University of Montevallo.
So girls' industrial school. That's an interesting thing. I don't know much about it. But there's another... Do you know the other fascinating, not a ghost story, but there's another very fascinating thing about the University of Montevallo there?
No.
On the steps of the main hall there is like a star or a gold plate.
Mm-hmm.
It is said to be the exact center of the state of Alabama.
Oh.
It was originally the exact center of Alabama was a few miles to the southeast of there, at a graveyard.
Oh.
I think that the original place was the real place, and that the University of Montevallo, to keep people from going to that cemetery and to get people to come to the university, I think they moved it. I don't know. That's the story, that originally right at that cemetery, the entrance to that cemetery was the original landmark for the exact center of the state of Alabama, which is still in Montevallo, but just a short few miles from there is the University of Montevallo, and now they have the marker there at the steps saying this is the center of Alabama. So another interesting little side story about that university. Very quaint old town. I guess Montevallo would not be much if it were not for that university, huh?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So, all kind of interesting stories. We've got about 15 minutes left. I want to talk for a minute about what we have been doing for the last year. We've been live streaming, and this is the first time that we've been at a different location. We're at the same location together. Because of this coronavirus, we're not running from it, but it just worked out to where it was easier for us to start doing it this way right now. And of course, Kevin likes it because he don't have to go anywhere. And you don't want him to stand up because he's got on a shirt and probably has no pants on.
Oh, I got it.
But anyway, and this works out good. Kevin's bosses are the company he works for, and we don't have to give the name of that, but they are working toward the possibility of the staff working from home. This is going to be maybe for the rest of the summer, in fact, be kind of the way we operate. But in today's technology, it's easy to do because it's like Kevin and I, we're both on the screen here. And, I can't punch him in his belly or anything, but we can still talk. The bottom line is there's so much we can do now that we couldn't do before technology was available. I've been using for a long time this platform called StreamYard, and it's, believe me, it's so much better than streaming directly to YouTube or streaming directly to Facebook. The quality, I think, is a lot better, and the audio is a lot better. It doesn't hang up. I think it runs. I hadn't had any complaints from it. Have you?
No.
So, bottom line is, there's a lot of opportunity for us, in spite of the fact that we're being instructed to keep this social distancing from each other so we don't pass this virus around. They're trying to, as we say, nip it in the bud before it gets spread too far. It's just an act of extreme caution because this seems to spread so easily. And but that doesn't mean we can't do things. I have been doing weddings, and now they're saying that they not to get together with any groups of people. So Kevin can't go out and get drunk anymore. They closed the bars down. The restaurants are closed down. They are stopping, and it's a matter of let's get a hold of this. We do not have a vaccine for it. We got to have a respectful fear of this. You don't want to jump out of a moving car, and it's so it's not that you're afraid of the car, but you're afraid of hitting the concrete while the car is moving. Bottom line is, we want to play our part in making sure that we get this thing under control before it gets out of hand. Right now, they say the numbers of people that are being diagnosed with this coronavirus are doubling every 2 days. That's fast. And so they're still testing people. Not everybody's been tested yet, so there's no telling how many cases are out there. Where I'm leading with all this is a comfortable way for us to communicate. It's a comfortable way for us to entertain. We share our stories with you, and we will invite people to join us. We can actually, I believe, get even a third person on here with us. We did that with the fellow up in Bristol, where the dolls moved that time. Mm-hmm. So we want to take a time to also, if you've got any interesting stories, we talk about it ahead of time. I can send you a link and you can join us in telling your stories, and let Kevin and I pick on you too. Give Kevin a break. So there's that. To communicate, people in my age group we've been told, hey, stay at home as much as possible. And the older you get, the more susceptible you are to this virus, and the more possibility of it actually taking your life. Mm-hmm. So move with extreme caution, but we can still have fun. We can still share. We can still be with each other in this fashion right here. And I think there's a lot of good opportunity with that. I've even proposed, especially in Alabama, and I'm taking a side step here, Kevin, but they changed the marital laws in Alabama. I can facilitate a virtual wedding for people now in Alabama. You don't have to leave your house. You can get the paperwork done at home. You go to Alabama Department of Health or Health Department, vital records, marriage certificate. You fill out the PDF form, print it out. We'll get it, have someone come by and notarize it for you, unless you want to come to us and get it notarized. And we can perform a ceremony online, just like Kevin and I. You can fix you up an arch in your living room and stand there, and I will be here. I'll even dress up for the occasion. And you can invite all the people you want to. We'll stream it to a place that it'll be by invitation only. And you can, without interfering with CDC policies, without putting anybody at risk, you can have your wedding. You can actually, if you've already reserved a venue, you just take your wedding party, a small group of people, to the venue, and we can do this virtually, and you can have your wedding and have all the guests participate in this fashion. There's a chat room. I think you see the chat room on your screen there, Kevin. And if you're invited in, you would see this chat room as well. And we would stream it to a private YouTube place to where it's by invitation only. So it wouldn't be just a public thing, and it would be archived there. So once it's done, you would have that film of your wedding. That way, grandma, grandpa, if somebody's on the other side of the planet, whomever could be part of the wedding. And of course, just like we did tonight, storytelling, sharing, and so forth. It's just a very neat way to conduct ourselves. We've been doing this for a good year without even having any virus to concern ourselves with. Is something going on there?
Oh yeah, I just remembered at the beginning of the show we were talking about Gettysburg. I finally remember the name of that place where I was talking about the silhouette on the wall. I thought I took a picture of the silhouette, but I didn't find it. I guess I couldn't get a good picture of it. Maybe
Is this the one you just shared at Dobbins?
Yeah, Dobbins' house. That's the picture I took outside on the ghost tour. It's creepy looking house.
Okay, we got a minute, so let me get that on with us, and you can talk about it a second. Just
because
go ahead.
I remembered something creepy about it when you look at the picture that they told us on the tour. If you didn't see the beginning of the episode, we were talking about Gettysburg, and I've got a actual pouch, gun ammunition pouch, and bullets from the Civil War there on the battlefield. But that house there was a hospital they took soldiers to. There were a lot of amputations. There it is on the screen. There were a lot of amputations done. Soldiers died there. Some of the ladies got sick and passed away there who were working as nurses. In fact, they say in that upstairs middle room, people have seen the apparition of a woman in old-timey nurse garb peering out the window, sort of sad looking. But,
is this a picture you took?
Yeah, I took this picture on the ghost tour. It's the Dobbins house is what it's called.
So in the upper window, to right window, the upstairs window, there's some kind of reflection there in the window. What is that?
In the upper, I don't know.
You see what I'm talking about?
Which, you said the upper right one?
Yeah, the highest one there to the far right, right at the edge of the picture. There's some kind of a white in the glass.
I don't know what that is. I know downstairs people were eating dinner. It's an inn and restaurant. But upstairs there, I don't think that's where the rooms are. They've got it in a different part of the building now. But I don't know if there was anybody up there in one of those windows at the time. I didn't see anybody in the windows.
Yeah. And then the next window has a little light, little dot.
Yeah, that
also has a little dot.
If I remember, they had some mock candles, and those candles like people put out at Christmas time.
Oh, yes.
I think that's what those are. They had in some of the windows to make it look.
I see those candles in the bottom windows for sure. Yeah. First two, those are very evidently candles. But right above the one that's closer to your face, you look straight up, and there's this whiteness in that top right window, just in the right panes. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I see. Yeah, I just don't know what it is. I don't know if that's.
And then the center pane is like a round something.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But what's scary is that when they were talking about it being used as a Civil War hospital, a lot of the amputations were done upstairs there in those rooms, and there were some downstairs too. But when they would hack off the limbs, they would toss them out those windows, and they'd land in piles on the ground. So buried a lot of them there. And like I say, years later, when they renovated this place, they dug up a lot of bones that were limbs, arms, legs, hands, just pieces, not full bodies,
Do you know anything about the history of this picture?
It seems familiar. I may have seen it online before, but I don't know who took it or what was going on there. But that is creepy.
Yeah. Well, we are down to a few more minutes here. Kevin's website is myhauntedolls.com, and he has 10 books published.
11.
11.
Yeah.
I guess you say 13 counting the 2 audio books.
Oh, yeah, you could say that. 13.
They're separate entities.
Yeah.
He's a very prolific writer, and he don't want to have to worry about the coronavirus. He wants to be able to sell books and work from home, and he's about to have the luxury of having a lot larger home to work out of.
So, or at least it'll be a little bigger than this one, depending on what
Yeah, which he's in a pretty decent house now, but where he is now is kind of like a town, not a townhouse, but a garden home.
Yeah, garden home.
Yeah, which is for a single guy, but he's collected so much stuff that is kind of busting at the seams.
Yeah.
And then he's got a dad that's getting older, and dad sold his house already, I guess.
He closes on April 3rd, which is scaring me because he can
Got a place to go.
well, he can stay on there. They're going to turn the property. The people buying it, who the wife of the couple of buying it, is with Remax, and she's worked out a deal where he can stay there. April and then May he'll have to pay a little rent.
Okay,
They're going to turn it into a rental property anyway.
I got you. So there you.
Come June, he'll have to start paying rent unless he can get out of there, which it kind of scares me. I don't know that he should have jumped and done that before I got a contract on mine because.
Well, you'll get something.
I
hate to say it, but the coronavirus will have maybe a outside positive effect for you moving your house because the kids are already out of school. I mean, they close the schools down.
Yeah.
The way this is going, I don't know if they'll actually open up. I don't know how they're going to do that. I guess they've got them doing their classes on the internet at home, kind of a homeschool situation handled by the public school system. But anyway, I don't know how that turned out. But he's going to have a lot larger house. Who knows when that happens exactly where he's going to end up because he hasn't found a house yet. Yeah. But there's a possibility, I guess, that if he gets situated the right place, we might start streaming from his basement at some point. But we'll find out about that.
Yeah.
At least if I come over there, maybe he'll have a 6-pack of beer and a cigar and smoke.
I had a showing set tomorrow, and I just got a text while we were talking that showing was canceled because they have an infant and don't want to expose her to any virus. So.
Yeah, my goodness. That's somebody going to look at your house. Well, I guess they
symptoms. So
they looked at your picture and they thought he might be a virus. Who knows?
My picture's not out there.
So you got it listed with a realtor, and that's good. Hopefully that something will happen for you pretty quick.
I hope so. I think my dad is paying rent.
How many YouTube subscribers you got now?
That's kind of gone up and down a little bit. I don't know. I don't know if maybe as the new people are coming on, maybe some of these old YouTube accounts, if you're not active,
right,
YouTube cancel you. So right now I can look on the manager here and see. Here we go, YouTube Studio. And we got, all right, now where's the, oh, here we go. Now it went up a little bit. It's 981 subscribers.
19 more people. Laurie Hastings is watching or was watching. Well, yeah, Laurie's still there. Go to My Haunted Dolls on YouTube and subscribe to Kevin's channel. I know he's not quite as interesting as I am, but he's getting better.
Yeah.
Now, Laurie, I don't know if you're watching this. Yeah, you're watching it on YouTube. I hope you subscribe to our channel there as well. I don't know if you've joined our group on Facebook. It's Abnormal Alabama on Facebook. Everything that Mr. Kevin does is about haunted dolls. So you just kind of look My Haunted Dolls and Kevin Kane, and you'll find him. He does a lot of audio stuff, storytelling that he puts out, and then he writes his books, and he's pretty active. He's a little bit slower now because he's in transition on buying a house.
Yeah.
He collected too many haunted dolls, and they kind of took over his house, and he's got to have a bigger house. And his friend over in Georgia has about 3 times as many dolls, and he's a little bit envious of that, I think. So. But myhauntedolls.com. You got anything you'd like to say, Kevin, before the 2 minutes is out? 1 minute?
Oh, 1 minute accounting. Just everybody stay safe and happy hauntings. And Check out myhunterdog.com, Abnormal Alabama, all that good stuff.
There you go. Thanks everybody for joining. This will be archived on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And I guess that Kevin has shared it all over as well as we spoke. We'll be back next Tuesday night, probably in this same format, because I know for the next couple of weeks we're kind of locked down. So if this was okay with you, Kevin, it's cool with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this, and message us, either one of us, anytime. If you'd like to participate in what we do, and if you got any stories to share, we'd like to hear your stories, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to share them. This is kind of the way it's going to be done for a while, because we're going to do our part to keep from spreading this virus. It's 9 p.m. Thank you all. Kevin, peace, brother. Good night, everyone.